The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade.
That's
The Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle.
Flipping the channel, surfing the news, about to give this old boy the blues. Talking heads don't make no sense, nothing to do with the shape I'm in. Need to sing, need to dance, need to cut loose in the way I can. Gonna fly away, by the free, bring on home, you and me.
Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 51, and our guest is G Love. Recording this conversation was a really special experience. We caught up with G ahead of his set at Jannus Live in St. Petersburg, Florida, the day before I ran my first marathon. 20 plus years after I started listening to G Love, 20 plus years after I first vowed to run a marathon, I find myself sitting in the green room with the former and mentally preparing for the latter. It was such a cool experience, and G couldn't have been more open and real and just a delight to talk to. G Love's latest record with his band G Love and Special Sauce is The Juice. It's available wherever you listen to music and at philadelphonic.com.
Let's come together now, in a sweet celebration.
Before we get to our conversation with G Love, I want to shout out our new Patreon patron, Alex. Al, thank you so much for your support of the show. Y'all, Al has been listening and engaging with the Marinade for a while now, and so it's such an honor to have him on board with our Patreon community. The second order of business I have is to explain why the hell we skipped episode 50. If you're following this show closely, or even if you just looked at your podcast feed and noticed that I went from 49 to 51, there's a reason for that. When this whole thing started, my good friend Peter was one of the first, if not the first, thought partner for the Marinade. He's the reason that I got into podcasts in the first place. He's also one of the funniest, smartest, and most thoughtful people I know. And very early on, he claimed episode 50 because he wants to interview me. So on episode 50, whenever Peter and I get a chance to get in the same room, Peter's going to interview me. He lives in Minneapolis now, and I live in Orlando. So the logistics are a little complicated. It may be 2 months from now. It might be a year. Regardless, episode 50 belongs to Peter. And when that happens, we'll just drop it in, even if we're on episode 150 at that point. The song you're hearing in this episode is Go Crazy off of The Juice by G Love and Special Sauce. Without further ado, everybody, my conversation with G Love. Thank you so much.
You want a beer or anything?
No, I'm good. I'm actually running a marathon tomorrow.
Oh, shit. All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Appreciate it, though. Do it.
All right. We're going to jump into it.
Cool. Let's do it. Man, thank you. This is such an honor. Yeah, maybe.
Should I shut this?
Yeah, if you're not claustrophobic, that might help us. Oh, man, that's perfect.
Check 1, 2. G Love's mic.
Oh, perfect.
Marinade.
Dude.
Right, man.
Yeah, I got you a button and a sticker.
Sick.
Those are gifts for you.
Love it.
Dude, this is such an honor. I was thinking about it as I was reflecting on this. I've been listening to The Juice a lot, and I love it. And I was like, man, Philadelphonic, I was not 18 or 19. So it hit me at like that place. Like I got into, and that's what got me into your music was Philadelphonic. And I think that hit me at that place where like you're exploring so much and you're getting to know your musical identity is starting to shape, right?
In Philadelphonic?
Yeah. Well, like I'm saying, like for me personally, listening to that music, like it hit me at a time in my life.
Oh, I see.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where like I was really starting to figure out what I wanted and what I wanted to listen to.
Right.
And really at the time it was like my focus, I was into all kinds of stuff, but I wanted to play baseball and I wanted girls to like me.
Okay.
And so there was like, right, I'm like 18, 19, and those are the things that mattered. And there were the girls who hung out with the guys who listened to country music, and then there were the girls who hung out with the guys who listened to hip hop, and there were the girls who listened to the guys who listened to other stuff, and all the girls seemed to like Philadelphonic, and so it was very advantageous to me at the time. And so it brought all of that together so beautifully, but I love that about it. And also that record kind of opened my eyes to a lot of different stuff. So first of all, thank you for all the beautiful music you've made.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. And I would note that Philadelphonic, which just turned 20 years old.
Crazy.
So that means you're 38.
I just turned 39.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also it had one of my greatest, what I call, quote, baby making songs, which is Give Me Some Lovin'. I call it that because a lot of people have said, oh, yeah, I met my wife listening to that song. We made our baby listening to that song.
That's got to feel good on some level.
Yeah, man.
Well, the Juice, man, I love it. The title track sounds like when the first time I heard it, I was like, this sounds like Tom Waits wrote a song with Tom Morello,
Great.
and they were both on Zoloft.
Okay. What's Zoloft?
It's like one of those uppers, kind of. It's like for upper's not the right word, but it's like for people with depression. Okay. So it's like because that's one of the things that I feel like is such a strength of yours is taking kind of heavier themes if you're gonna have to take them there and making such a joyful sound out of it.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know? There's like that undercurrent of joy that goes through it. So I just want to get into that. What did the Juice look like coming together? Was it like you and Keb were sitting there and you're like, let's call up the coolest motherfuckers we can think of and make a record, and that's how it all came about? Or what did that process look like?
You mean the song or the whole record?
I mean the record as a whole, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the story started with Keb Mo and I. Keb, we were signed by a guy named Michael Kaplan, who's an A&R guy, Epic Records. In the 90s, he signed us to, and together we relaunched the quote, Race Records label, called a Race record label because in the 30s, they released African-American artists' music, including Robert Johnson, the OK record label, OKEH. So we relaunched this record label together in 1994. And that was like a huge honor because it was like a blues label, right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool. And so then fast forward 20 years, and Keb and I went on tour, and then he said, well, we talked about doing something. He offered to produce me. And so the record looked like basically me going down to Nashville and constructing a record with one of the most meticulous guys I've ever worked with or met in Keb Mo, and starting from the ground up, like writing songs with him or bringing him songs and having him kind of go over them with a fine-tooth comb and reworking them and taking them to what ended up to be a stronger place, I feel strongly. And a real kind of lesson, like putting me into this role of being not only a student of the blues, but a student of music. So it was like a master class in making records and recording and writing and just music in general. And that was the process. And it was a lot of fun.
What kind of nuggets did you get from him? I mean, this guy's won Grammys, and he's, you mentioned how meticulous he is. What kind of lessons did you learn about the record-making process and working that closely with him? Anything stand out?
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean his work ethic, for one thing, is unbelievable, and then just his dedication to, to detail and not letting anything. I mean, like the joke is that he could have Jimi Hendrix in the studio, and he'd say, "Okay, Jimmy, let's hear Purple Haze, take one. Let's hear the vocal." And Jimi Hendrix would go, "Purple Haze running through," and Keb would say, "Hold on, Jimmy, not like that, like this. Purple Haze rolling through my mind." Jimmy said, "All right," So Keb would and no one that came in the studio did not get fucked with by Keb, whether it was like Robert Randolph or Roosevelt, all these amazing, masters of their instrument, had to, and certainly all the side musicians, anybody that stepped foot in, certainly me, man, he would, like the first night we did the first song we wrote all together, and he had another writing partner named Gary Nicholson, who also is like a Grammy award-winning blues writer. Gary and I wrote this song and brought it to Keb, and then we finished it called "Fix Your Face," and then when it came time to cut the vocal that first night on the demo, same thing. Keb, all right, let's try the vocal, G. All right. Fix your face, baby. No, hold on, not like that. Fix your face, baby. All right, I'll try it again. Fix it. And this went on for till 3 a.m. And then I'm sitting there with two 70-year-old men, and I'm like, what the fuck are these guys doing? I didn't know they do this late still.
Seriously.
I mean, no one stays in the studio late anymore because no one has a budget. And that's just not the way records seem to be made, at least in my sphere. We would start at 2 p.m. and walk out at 8 a.m. in the morning, back in the day, but that's not going on. But so then the next day I come in, and Keb goes, I was just messing with you, G. I just want to see if you were here to work or not.
Shut the fuck up.
But that being said, that vocal on that take is the vocal that we did that night, with him going every word, every line, no, sing it again, like this.
Yeah.
And so what I learned where to put the vocal on a beat, how you can play with the vocal by putting it on a downbeat or an upbeat, a thing called on the one, not like James Brown or John Lee Hooker playing a song on just one chord or on the one chord, but more that on the beat, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the blues. We think about Keb would relate it to a chain gang. So you go dig a ditch on the one with the shovel, and he had me in the vocal booth pretending like I was digging, one,
like
2,
mime,
3,
actually
4.
miming it out.
Yeah. So every 1, 2, 3, and everything would be. So that's why. So it was I'm drinking wine, all and you're shoveling. I'm literally doing this. So a lot of it was really awkward, but I went. You go with it because you why wouldn't you?
Right.
You know what I mean? And again, Keb's got 4, 5 Grammys or whatever he has, and I don't have any. So that was part of this journey for me. Was I would like to make a record that could get considered for a contemporary blues Grammy.
Yeah.
And that's something that that I want to try to achieve. So that's part of what my goal was, working with Keb Mo, and then him teaching me how he makes records.
Yeah. So was there ever a moment where you're like, God damn it, Keb, can we just take, that take was perfect, can we just go with it? Or were you really in the whole moment, all right, I've given it all over, the reins over to you, let's go?
Yeah, no. So definitely when as we progressed in our working relationship and as the record progressed towards completion, because like I said, we kind of did 2 or 3 kind of writing sessions that were demo sessions that ended up being working demos, and then we did a final push last December 2018, a 10-day session to finish the record, and then that became a little bit of a time crunch, and with all the other instruments, then we only had a couple day or two to really make sure on my vocals, which are really the most important thing,
right,
in a lot of ways, to be on point. And I did have to tell him, I was like, look, let me just do, because I'd start a take, and then he'd be like, and I'd be vibing because the music sounds great, and I love the song. I started singing it, and he'd stop me right away and say, no, it has to be on, like, put, like, on She's the Rock, like, singing like this, like, lay back, no, singing on this beat, line by line. And
Right.
I'm like, now I've been working together for a couple of years, so I'm like, look, really, can you just give me 3 passes? Let me do 3 passes of my vocal, with and just let me get through it and get my vibe out there, just how I'm feeling it, like the inspiration. And then if there's things that need to be aggressed, like rhythmically and anything else, I'll come back and do the takes for you. So I did have that moment where sure, and that's like that with anything, like making a record, any big project. There's always going to be times when you bang your head against the wall and you get frustrated. So yeah, there was some moments, some moments got pretty tense, but they were kind of necessary, and it never came to a point where I was unhappy. Like, I was always happy and just kind of really blown away by, again, his attention to detail and all the time he put into this project. Because again, there's no budgets to make records, and certainly, he or I could make a lot more in a night than we could, for 3 years working on that record.
Right. And he could work with so many people, and he's going to spend all that time with you. It's got to feel really, really good.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you've earned the right to be there. You've done the work for a long time, but still, he's still Keb Mo, you know, and so that's really, really great. Have you had experiences previous to that one that that allowed you to roll with the punches in that way, in the sense of like, that attention to detail, either that you've worked with other people who were that way, or did you yourself have a bit of that in your life anyway, or in your music anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have, and it's not an easy thing to be told, like, your song sucks, but I read a lot of songs, and I've heard that a lot, especially, my manager is a guy named Jason Brown, and we've been best friends since 2nd grade. So in our relationship, I mean, the older we've gotten, our communication's mellowed out, but we're yin and yang. So, and also because of our relationship, our personal relationship, he's got no problem telling me, like, what do you think of this song? Well, I don't think it's very good, or I think it sucks, or I think you need to come up with something a lot better than that. So over the years, I've, you have to kind of, it's a hard thing, because when you write a song, you're really like kind of, hopefully you're really opening yourself up and you're being honest. At the very least, you're writing a song that you care about enough and feel enough to sing, and then feel for yourself, and then record it, give it to other people. So you're putting yourself out there, and no one wants to hear, like, I don't like that.
Right.
So, or no one wants to hear that you could sing that better, or you need to sing it differently, or the way you're naturally approaching it's the wrong way. But this is something that, in any line of work you're in, you have to be able to take constructive criticism, especially from the people that are, trying to help you to achieve success.
Right.
I mean, so that's, if, we don't know each other, me and you don't know each other very well. So if you wrote in an interview or whatever, this song sucks or whatever, G Love sucks, like, that would still hurt.
Yeah.
But, I don't, but it doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And if someone says, if my drummer, who you were just sitting with while I was out there, he'll be like, I don't like that song, so I was like, all right, well, I'll just go play it with someone else, or, we won't play that tonight. We got a million songs.
Right.
So you kind of learn how to, like, and then it makes me question quality control. So then I'll say, all right, well, he doesn't like that song. I respect him. I don't always agree with him, but let me check this out. Maybe this song's not really worth pursuing. Not like, if I bring a new song to the guys, Jim and Jeff, I'd say like 85% of the time they come in right in playing something that you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the times that I bring a song and they're just like, either they're not feeling it or they're not hearing it like I'm hearing it, and then it's like a fucking drag. And then I got to decide, like, do I want to, force feed these motherfuckers this song because I know that it's great and I can get them where they need to be, or do I want to move on?
How do you make that decision?
I think it just comes down to the fact where, like, I can honestly say, like, I think it comes down to the fact I can honestly say, like, yeah, maybe this one doesn't need to. Maybe we don't need to add this to the repertoire or this list of songs to get recorded. And I got this other one that's working really well with these guys, so why not just go there? But I guess it's just like an honest look at yourself, and honestly, it gets easier because of the fact it gets easier for me to walk away from shit, because we have so many records out,
right?
And so I have to really set a bar high for like a reason to write a song, and a reason to, if really think about, is this a song that's going to be good for the band?
Yeah.
Or a good song to record on a record? Is this song going to stand the test of time? You know what I mean?
But it seems like once you make that decision that you're okay with walking away from it, then walking away wouldn't be the hard part. The hard part would, I think the way you phrased it was like, am I going to force feed it to these motherfuckers? Do you have those songs that you're like, no, this is the song, like this one, trust me guys, we're going to get there.
Right.
Do those moments happen, and how do you decide that is a song that's worth pushing your boys on?
Well, like a couple of songs, like two songs pop into mind. One song was a song called Walk the Slide off our first record.
Mm-hmm.
So, right before we had our first record, we had two bass players. One was Jim, and then Jim got fired right away, and then we brought in this other kid. And so this kid's name was Nick. He played an upright bass too. He was younger than me. He was like 17, and I was 20. And Jeff was like 30. Mm-hmm. And so I had written a song this week, and this is when we're starting to just do the first G Love and Special Sauce gigs around Boston. And we had rehearsal. I pulled out the song Walk the Slide, which and the bass player, it was like a lot of stuff is like a little quirky, chords different, it was a little darker. He just couldn't wrap his head around it. And part of the reason was because he had taken mushrooms the night before and was just like frazzled and in a mood, Right. And so like he left rehearsal, and I just remember Jeff and I were like super bummed because it just sucked, because we had this cool thing, and the bass player was like, no, this fucking sucks, like, and then that was the end of rehearsal, and then we fired him. And that song's on the record. So and it is one of like dark kind of mystical song, but it's one of the great ones that a lot of people like. And then I think about one with the special sauce, which was Hot Cookin'.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote Hot Cookin', kind of when I was hanging out with Jack Johnson and Donovan Frankenrider a lot. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just to be honest, it's kind of inspired by, their writing and their kind of flow. And I brought it to Jim and Jeff, and they're like, this is bullshit. This is a bullshit song. And
that's not a very strong argument.
and, they just weren't feeling it because it was kind of strummy.
Yeah.
It was a little jangly. It wasn't super funky, although I did put like this kind of meters riff. It's funkier the live version than the recorded version, which is. Mm-hmm. But so I kept bringing this song to soundcheck, and these guys would just shit all over it. And but that song, I knew, I was like, this song's a hit song, and you guys are gonna fucking learn it.
Yeah.
And I really did dig my heels in, and that was the first single of the Lemonade record, which was one of our more commercially successful records. So
right.
If I do have a really strong conviction, I will fight for a song, and if I don't, then that's just saying to me, like, all right.
So it sounds like it's more instinct than anything else, just a feeling.
Yeah. and then again, like, but again, like, it's like the older I get, it's like we have so many songs. Yeah, like, well, here's an example. Like, we're in the process right now of seeing which songs from the new record, The Juice, translate into a G Love and Special Sauce show.
Right.
And so I'm thinking about what songs I want to bring to the band. Well, the one we're working on right now is a song called Birmingham, which, is a...
It's one that has Robert Randolph on it.
It's Robert Randolph and Keb Mo on it. It's written by this guy, it's a song that occurred outside the session. It was written by myself and Sam Hollander. Sam's a huge songwriter. Like, he wrote High Hopes for Panic at the Disco last year. And, like,
oh, wow.
Fits in the Tantrums, I Can Make Your hand clap, and a ton
wow.
of shit,
Wow.
And we've been writing for years. So that one was written with him and I, and I don't, just to be honest, like, I don't feel super connected to that song, like, emotionally, because it's a story that's kind of made up, whereas everything else on the record's really, like, my personal shit or how I feel about shit. And so, but a lot of people, just from the record's been out for a week, it's getting some reaction, that song, even though it's not a single, and it has a good tempo, so let's try and bring it to the stage. Well, so we're starting to work it, and it's not going so well. But I'm going to keep working on it because I know that it's a good tempo piece, and it's on the new record, and we should introduce it. But so far, it hasn't been easy. Whereas Soul BQ is, if you come to show tonight, like, we'll start the set with Soul BQ, and that was like a live hit for me, acoustic, and the guys have fallen into like a great live performance with the band on it. And then the other one, which is the hit, is Shake Your Hair, which I never was really able to get a great acoustic solo version of it going, but now with the band, it's like, to me, and I think even for the guys, like, I think it's all of our favorite song on this tour.
I could see how Soul BQ would translate acoustic, whereas Shake Your Hair wouldn't.
Yeah.
There's almost more. There's like a bounce to Shake Your Hair that's different from Soul BQ. Soul BQ's also bouncy, you know, definitely. But there's a little bit more of a solo kind of vibe to it. You know, like it could translate solo. I could see. Yeah. Whereas the other wouldn't make as much sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do when you were talking about Birmingham, are the guys feeling it live, or are they still kind of like you are, where it's like, man, I just can't quite get it right?
Well, we haven't played it live in front of an audience yet, and
that's when you'll know.
And also, this record's, again, it's challenging because this is the first record I've ever put out that, except for the first G Love Oh Yeah record, which is a solo, that neither Jim and Jeff play one lick on it at all.
Oh, interesting.
So this is doubly hard for me because I gotta, they're not involved in this record, but they're the band.
Yeah.
So, I need them to kind of do the work for a project that they're not totally invested in.
That's interesting.
So that's another challenging piece, to bring this G Love record to the Special Sauce show.
Have y'all had conversations about that?
I mean, sometimes more like, just for instance, this is kind of, we're the three of us are a quirky bunch. It's amazing that we still like to live on a bus together. But,
yeah.
Like, for instance, like, my whole thing was like, if I was in a band, right, and the band leader was going to make a record, I wasn't a part of it.
Yeah.
I would be the guy that would say, even just for job security, hey, man, I can't wait to hear the new record. Show me what you're working on. Can we play any of it live?
Right.
But those guys would never, ever say that to me.
Interesting.
So we have an interesting, personality dilemma between the three of us. But that's just part of being in a band, And like, you know, my drummer, for instance, like even on this tour, he'll be like the first week of tour, he's like, he wanted to show me this. What's the folk singer that died? Is an English guy in the '60s? Nick, not Nick Cave, or was it Nick Cave?
No, Nick Cave's still
not
around.
Nick Cave.
Put out an amazing record.
But
Nick-
it's
Nick Lowe. Not
yeah,
Nick Lowe.
Yeah. So he had a Nick Lowe song. Jeff, the drummer, he was like, "Yo, I want to show you this song. So I want to sing this song. I want to work it up." And I'm like, "All right, dude. Like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it because, like, you know that my record's coming out next week. We're on a record release tour. You know, have you taken the time to, like, if I was you, I would have come prepared with every song, like, ready to go, at least how it is on the record, and
Right.
know the shit back and forth. It's my fucking job."
Right.
Yeah, but you're coming to me and saying, "Hey, I really want to work on this out of the blue, like this Nick Lowe cover. Nothing against that. That's a wonderful song, but like, bro, focus on like, at the very least, like bread and butter, like what we're trying to do out here. Like, if we can have any record break through, it's gonna be great for all of us.
Right.
You know what I mean? So these are the kind of, you know, things that like that are just part of, you know, our grind. You know what I mean?
So what lessons have you learned from touring that long and being in a band that long? What lessons about longevity in this creative life have you learned?
Well, I think you gotta, like, for one thing, you gotta pick your battles, you know, and that's a big part of it. And the pros and cons of loyalty, you know, because you know, generally, I don't like to fire people. Like my Chris, who you probably met,
Yep.
my front of house guy, sound guy, he's produced records for me. You know, we've been working together since 1996. The band's been together off and on mostly since 1993.
It's
you know,
amazing.
My guitar tech and stage manager Frank, he's been with us since 2003. We have a new merch guy, and that's our crew. But like, so I'm kind of loyal to a fault, and that also, just to be honest, like that also could be because I'm lazy. Like I don't want to have to train a new guitar tech to this is how I like it, or I don't want to have to learn. You know, with my band, we have a huge repertoire. Like we're not going to play 300 songs tonight, but we could.
Right.
You know, and so I think that, but at the same time, I think that and then also just kind of letting shit roll off you. Like you know, you have to have a kind of tough skin to live on our boss. You know, everyone's like family. It's like that tough love kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that being said, there's a real deep bond and a super chemistry in that family that we have, and I think that there's a lot of power in that on stage. And like Jeff, my drummer, always says, like, it's pretty cool. Like I could play these songs with anybody, but it is pretty cool that like when you come to the G11 Special Sauce song, you're gonna hear those parts that those guys came up with played by them.
Right.
You know, and maybe played on the same instrument that was on the record.
That's awesome.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sounds like that loyalty's serving you well, is what that sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's times when, you know, just to be honest, like I think about it, I think about that all the time. Like, do I want to make a change? Like this record particularly, it was a lot of talk, like in my camp, like should I take a different band out this year because those guys aren't on the record. It's a new record. It's good, fresh opportunity to come with a different look. And then I was really kind of trying to think about it, and I didn't have a real, other than just what I just said, I didn't have a real strong reason for, can other guys, is there some guys that are dressed better? Yeah.
Yeah,
There's some guys that look more like rock stars than these guys. Yeah, okay, yeah, definitely. There's some more handsome guys, I'm sure, or handsome
I
gals.
don't know, Jeff looked pretty handsome.
Yeah, Jeff's a handsome guy. I mean, and Jim is too. But like, you know, can I get some younger guys? Can I get a bigger band? I mean, I could do whatever I want, but yeah,
Sure.
I didn't.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting quite, like you said, with this record, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about is like, did you and Keb Mo have like the most impossibly cool? I'm picturing it with like an old school Rolodex and going through like the coolest musicians you could think of, and you're like, let's see, who we got? Marcus King. Anybody got Marcus King's number? Anybody got Roosevelt's number?
Yeah,
We got
right.
Roosevelt Collier's number. So, what did that process look like figuring out the collaborators? And I bet some of those dudes would at least sit in with you, if not come on tour with you. Roosevelt, for example.
Yeah.
So what did that process look like getting those collaborators in the studio?
Yeah, I mean, Robert's like an old friend. Like
Okay.
we like party. Like
Yeah.
he's my guy. And Marcus is just the sweetest guy, and we got to bond and jam a lot on the blues cruise that we were on.
Oh, cool.
Roosevelt, I just he's always been super cool with me, and I'm just such a huge fan of him. And again,
Yeah.
from like being on a jam cruise with him and just doing showing up at shows around Jazz Fest or the Boom Boom Room in San Francisco and sitting in with him. So I wanted to ask him to be on it. And then there's a guy, Ron Ortiz II, who's a youngish Hawaiian. He's African American, raised on the North Shore of Oahu. And just an amazing Hawaiian blues guy. What I would say like the Hawaiian Gary Clark.
Oh, wow.
But maybe a little more singer-songwritery. But and then
That sounds like my shit right there.
yeah, he is really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was just like I wanted to basically just bring a bunch of guys that were kind of contemporary guys on the fringe of the blues, like pushing blues, and so all those guys were part of that, yeah, kind of just the right amount of sit-ins, and then of course Keb Mo himself plays on most of the tracks, or plays or sings on, does something on most of the tracks.
Golly. That's amazing. Well, the result's beautiful, man, and I'm crazy about it, and I appreciate it. I appreciate your time too, and I don't want to take much more, but we always end on what you're consuming at the moment, art-wise. What's got you fired up? It could be music, I don't know, a painting you saw, a book you read, whatever it is that you're excited about.
Well, I mean, damn, you just open it to art, but yeah, I mean, I get super sparked by art, and we're like big, well, not big, but I'm an art collector.
I didn't know that.
Kind of from playing at Art Basel in Miami, for the last 10 years, I always go down and I would do pop-up shows down there, and then any money I make, I'd buy some paintings by shit that I love, and I love a lot of street art, and I also like a lot of fine art. And I also don't have super deep pockets, so I look for emerging, artists. And actually, the guy who did a record cover is a guy who I collect heavily, named Greg Haberny.
Okay.
And so our house is really almost like a Greg Haberny museum.
Wow.
And the visual art that we surround ourselves with, that sparks me, because when I'm home and I surround myself with this artwork that captivates me, and I can just stare at it. And some of the artists we collect are like Cause. We have some Banksy stuff. Greg Haberny, and Steve Powers, who did our last record cover, Love Saves the Day. He's a major street artist. Maya Hayek, and Brian Leo.
Wow.
And then Catherine Bernhardt and Catherine Bradford, Brian Bellot. Anyhow, so a lot of these artists, if you open it to that's what's good.
I love
that's what
that.
gets my attention.
Nobody ever answers that way, and I'm so glad you did. What is it about Greg Haberny's art that speaks to you so much?
I don't know, but art's so visceral for me. It just forgive the expression, but I always have a thing. It's this shit is either gonna get your cock hard or not. When I look at this shit, it sparks I don't know. At the same token, like there's nothing that upsets me worse than like bad art.
Huh.
And you know, like,
What do
oh
you
my
mean?
God. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not. I mean, just I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff that's just not on the level. You know.
Do you
like,
feel that way about music?
Yeah, I feel that way about. I feel that way about like food, anything that requires like a creative thing, food, music. You know, you could kind of art certainly. What is it about Greg Haberny that really gets me? He like it's paintings, but he does a lot of multimedia stuff. Like his process is super involved. Like if you go in the studio, on the floor are all these paintings he's working on. He walks over them all day, and you walk in his studio. Oh, I don't want to step. No, please step on it. He wants all the dirt from the city streets of New York to be on those canvases, and he's really kind of like, you know, I'm using the word visceral again. I can't even give you an exact definition, but it's like guttural. It's like coming from.
Yeah.
It's just like spilling out, like immediate.
I think I know what you mean. When visceral is a very descriptive term. I get it when you say that.
Just like,
you know,
kind of nitty gritty and yeah, I don't know. And art's such a personal thing.
Yeah.
Because you could look at a painting, I could look at it, and I could love it, and it could really just do nothing for you, you know, or vice versa. So, but yeah, I will say that I love the record cover, like that's his work. It's a brown piece of cardboard. You might think that a kid did it. And like, for instance, my sound guy Chris, he'll be like, "Yeah, did you have your son do this?" You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't get it. It doesn't do anything for him.
Right. That's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But that's an example of his artwork. If I look at the record cover, I'm like, it's so cool. Like, to me, it's
well, and that's why I asked you that about when it bothers you to see shitty art, you know, because I think it is so subjective and it's hard. And I think with music, I find it, I'm trying to back off a little bit personally about criticizing music. What I do here isn't really critical at all. It's all about celebrating. I don't sit down with people that I'm not crazy about, you know? Okay. So it's all about celebration, and there's no critique to it. If I write an album review, I'm only writing about it if I liked it. Right. I don't tear anybody's record down because I just don't have the time or energy for that, you know? Right. Yeah. But I am trying to let go a little bit of kind of my attitudes towards some music that I would have called shitty, that probably is shitty, but that makes people happy, you know? And that's one thing that I struggle with visual art is like you said, it's so subjective. And if, you know, Chris looks at it and it doesn't make any sense to him, but it gets your dick hard, you know? Yeah. So I don't know where to go with that. You know, I don't know, because I think there is a place for critique. I'm not saying that critique isn't valuable. I do think it's valuable. Yeah. But I just feel very uncomfortable with it.
Yeah. Especially it's hard to be critical in this day and age as well, because everyone can get at you. Like, you can come on you could write a review and say, "Oh, the G Love record, the at G Love or the at Billy G Love record sucks," and it's gonna pop up on my feed like, "Oh," and I could click on it and say, "Oh, damn, who is this guy?"
This just had. Do you know the songwriter Lydia Lovelace? Or have you listened to her music? She's this wonderful songwriter, and like objectively a wonderful songwriter in country, folk, rock kind of stuff, you know, singer-songwriter kind of stuff. Hopefully she's not cringing if she's listening to me describe her music, but she's wonderful. And I just saw it on Twitter. Somebody said they were in a bar and they mentioned one of her songs and said, you know, and just railed it, and tagged her. And I was like, what kind of little person are you? Why did you feel the need to tag the artist? Like, maybe you want to put it out there because you felt the need to share that for some reason. Even that I have a hard time with. But to like, this is this person's art that they've created, that they've spent so much time with and poured their hearts into. And you felt the need to put it out there like that. And of course, predictably, she just got absolutely railed. This person who said that, you know, fans of Lydia's came to her defense and were just like, what's wrong with this person? And I mean, everybody had a thought, and it was all positive toward Lydia. But I just thought, man, this is a person that has poured their heart out with this art, and you're gonna take to Twitter and say this one-off comment, probably after you had 5 beers. You know?
I mean, it's interesting, and like just at the same time, like we kind of talked earlier about the having tough skin or be able to take critique. I mean, just to be honest, like, I could read, and I don't really like to, I really stay away from looking at reviews because it is, you could read 1,000 glowing reviews, and then that one review that even isn't even that mean, but says something, that's going to be the one that like pops in your head while you're in front of people and pops in your head when you're questioning, the question that everybody asks themselves, like, am I good? Am I worthy? Like, is what I'm doing necessary or important? So it's hard, man. It's hard. The best thing to do is, and that's again why social media is like so hard.
Yeah.
Because, do you really want to know if people like you or not, or do you really want to know that people just like you? You know what I mean? Like, if people go on and say, "Oh, your podcast sucks and your questions suck," but a million people said, "Oh, I love your podcast and your questions," you're just gonna think about that one guy. I mean, I don't know how you can't. Like, it's hard. Like,
yeah, but and then also, it's not healthy to just have people saying how great it is,
right?
Because you need the feedback.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really hard to get from people.
Yeah.
I mean, I ask for feedback all the time, and I just get people saying, "I love what you're doing, man,"
right.
And I really appreciate that. I'm not, please, y'all, keep it coming. I don't know why I looked at the recorder when I said that, but y'all keep it coming.
Yeah.
Like, I need that too, because this is a lot of work, and it is putting myself out there quite a bit, but at the same time, sometimes I'm like, well, what do I need to do better? Because being your own critic can be really dangerous. And I only have myself as a critic.
Yeah.
So being your own critic can be super dangerous because if you get too far down that spiral, then everything sucks. Like you're worthless, right? Especially if you're in a depressive moment or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think about my son's in art school right now, and part of going to art school is like having that critique. Like, that's what they do. That's part of the process, right? Like, they all create something, and then they all sit around and have critique each other.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty cool thing to go through for like a student to be that part of the program. Be like, okay, now you've just poured your soul into this. Hopefully, you poured your heart and soul into this project, and now people are going to tell you whether they think it's good or not,
right?
Or what they do like on it and what they don't like on it.
When getting that at a little bit earlier age is also super helpful, so that you're not becoming disenchanted later on when the world hits you in the face with some of those critiques.
Yeah, but then I look back too, because I was his age when my record was coming out, and you maybe we'll just kind of close on this, but like, that's why a lot of people's first records are their greatest records, because it's your whole life leading up to that record where you really have no one fucking with you and telling you whether they think it's good or worthy or bad and unworthy. And then, think about De La Soul's first record, 3 Feet High and Rising, and then the second record was De La Soul's Dead.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because they came out, they did something no one ever did before, and then half the people loved it, and half the people wanted to say, "Oh, this not really hip hop," and then they had to come back and say, "No, we are." Like, the next record was like, "No, we are." And same thing with like The Far Side.
Mm-hmm.
The Bizarre Ride to the Far Side is one of the greatest hip hop records. I mean, how fun is that record?
Yeah.
And then the next record's serious.
Yeah.
So like, and our first record too. Like, we came out with this amazing thing, and then the next record's blues, because we were so sick of people, saying, "How the fuck can you be rapping? You're a white kid from Philly whose dad's a lawyer. What gives you the right to play the blues? You're a white kid from Philly whose dad's a lawyer." So
how did you?
I've been hearing that shit from an early age, and did that affect my music? Yeah.
I was just gonna say, how'd you get through that?
I did. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think over the years, when you don't go away, people stop questioning whether why you're doing it or what gives you the right to, appropriate, African American culture.
Right.
And because obviously I love it.
Exactly, and you're
That's what gives
respectful,
me the
right?
right.
It's not like
You know
you're
what I mean?
yeah, you're putting in the work and you're doing it
Yeah.
respectfully, and it's not like it's just you and a bunch of white dudes either. Like you're collaborating with people who maybe have a little bit more of or living that life in a different level, and so you've got the credibility now. You've been doing it for so long.
Yeah, you hang
The
around long
authenticity.
enough and people stop asking, why are you here? They're just like, oh, he's here. He's still here.
Dude, gee, I'm glad you're here, and thank you so much, man.
Jeff.
That was such a pleasure, dude. Thank you. Oh, that was perfect.
All right, I got to jump.
Be on home, you and me. I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm gonna lose my mind. Go crazy. Yeah, I'm gonna lose my mind. If I don't go crazy, I'm gonna lose my mind. If I don't go crazy, yeah, I'm gonna lose my mind. If I don't go crazy, if I don't go.
G Love, y'all. What an honor. Thank you, G, for your openness and your time. Thank you for listening, everybody. What a weekend. I got to talk to G Love. I ran 26.25 fucking miles. Hung out with some of my favorite people and greatest inspirations in my partner Chris and our dear friends Emma and Rose. I could talk about that weekend forever, and I do quite a bit over on Patreon. More about that in just a second. First, follow us on Twitter, please. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. In that order is kind of the priority for me, but I try to keep up with all of them as much as possible. Give us a follow on your podcast app and rate the show if you dig what we're doing. If you really like what we're doing, please consider joining our Patreon community. For just a few bucks a month, you can gain access to our Patreon exclusive show, Jason's Journey, where I talk about the moments that have shaped and continue to shape my creative life. All right, y'all, it's time for what I'm getting down on, this segment where I talk about the art that is inspiring me at the moment. I've been devouring everything by Riley Walker. I don't know what took me so long to get into him. I've followed him on Twitter for a long time, but never really listened to him. And he's opening for Drive By Truckers here in Orlando this coming April. So I just thought I'd dive in and see what his music was all about. And he's just amazing. He's an incredible guitar player, has a wonderful voice, and it kind of spans a lot of different genres, very jazzy feeling stuff, bluesy feeling stuff. It's an interesting marriage, the Drive By Truckers with Riley Walker. So I cannot wait for that night, because what they do is definitely very different, but I get it. I mean, it does make sense. Check him out if you haven't. Everything he does, like I like everything that he's made. He did a whole record he basically did the whole, he did in fact do the whole Lily White Sessions, the Dave Matthews Band, and released that as a record. It's just fantastic. I can't say enough about him. Really, really cool. I've been reading Steve Silberman's Neurotribes, which is a deep dive into autism. This book is wonderful. It uses fascinating, very human stories to examine just such a little understood condition. I highly recommend that book, Neurotribes, as well as Steve's podcast, which I've mentioned before, with the legendary David Crosby. It's called Freak Flag Flying. They're old friends, and the story of how they became friends is really, really cool and heartwarming. And then they have such a great chemistry, and it comes through during the conversation. And Crosby's so interesting as well. I mean, Steve and David are both really fascinating guys. So check that out, Freak Flag Flying, Neurotribes, and then listen to Riley Walker. Listen to everything he's done. Just so good. That's all I've got this week, y'all. Stay tuned for some incredibly cool conversations. I have so many great things going on. We just booked a dream guest, and if you're curious about that, head on over to Patreon, and you can download Jason's Journey if you contribute to the Patreon, and you can hear the big reveal. I try to make sure that on Patreon, we go a little bit deeper. I talk about the behind the scenes stuff and the moments that make the show what it is. All right, y'all. Until next time, go out and create something. Cheers, y'all.